It's not a source of pride for our country. How can one be proud when a person not elected by the people becomes the President of the United States? How can something like that happen? Well, they say the Constitution was followed, yes. But the Constitution has said many other things over the years that should have been followed, and people, using civil disobedience, tried to change the law. What if I tell you that Donald Trump's downfall didn't start with a trial or a secret FBI investigation, but with laughter? Yes, laughter. A single laugh that destroyed everything. Because when a person who built their empire on fear and spectacle becomes a national joke, there's no way back. But before I tell you how his image collapsed live on air, you need to know something. This isn't a political story. It's a warning. A warning about what happens when an entire country mistakes fame for leadership, and when a single person, with an outsized ego and paper-thin skin, decides the world must revolve around them. Have you ever wondered what it takes for someone, not elected by the majority, to become president? And more importantly, what it takes to publicly destroy them without a trial? The answer is simple. One person, one microphone, and a truth no one dared to speak aloud. Michael Moore didn't come to entertain, not for likes or trends. He came to set fire to the lie. And what he said made everyone hold their breath. Because he wasn't talking about conspiracy theories or legal technicalities. He was talking about the monster hiding behind the makeup, the actor who memorized the script of populism but never believed in it. And he did it so brutally, so bluntly, that even the most loyal supporters began to doubt. Trump as a leader is a malignant narcissist, Moore said. And he said it without fear. Because when you know the character from the inside, you don't need evidence. You only need memory. Can you imagine how dangerous a person is who only thinks of themselves, who measures every decision by how it makes them look? Now imagine that person controlling the nuclear button. But that's not the scariest part. The truly terrifying thing is that millions followed him, knowing who he was. Why? Because those who ruined their lives hate Trump. The elite hate him. Wall Street hates him. The press, which first created him, then crucified him. And that was enough for many. The enemy of my enemy is my savior. That was the deal. A deal that cost very, very dearly. But every empire has a weak spot. And in Trump's case, that weak spot is laughter. Because when Moore took the microphone, he didn't accuse him. He ridiculed him. And that hurt more than any headline. He exposed the illusion of the brilliant businessman. He reminded the country that this business genius bankrupted casinos. Yes, casinos. Places where money flows on its own. And you know what else he revealed? That while selling himself as the people's defender, he was flying on private jets surrounded by gold and signing caps as if they were the Bible. The outsider image was just a disguise, and Moore tore it off in front of everyone. But the most devastating thing was that he mocked what Trump needs most: respect. Because for someone like him, being feared is vital, but being laughed at is deadly. And in that moment, when the laughter rang out, Trump knew something had broken. He could no longer control the narrative. He was no longer the puppeteer. He was a meme. And you, watching this right now, ask yourself, where were you when the mask fell? Were you laughing or still applauding? Write in the comments below. I want to know what you think. Do you believe Trump still has power, or was it all a mirage starting to fade? But wait, because it doesn't end here. What Michael Moore said next was even more explosive. He called him the godfather of fake news. Yes, the same man who screams about fake news invented it. Remember when he said Obama wasn't a citizen? That was all part of the show. A show that Moore dissected with surgical precision. He said Trump even hired investigators to prove his lie. A script so absurd that even Hollywood wouldn't film it. But America bought it, and that was the real trick. Trump wasn't selling policy. He was selling a show, and we were his captive audience. But like any good magician, his trick only works as long as the audience believes in the illusion. And now, millions are opening their eyes. And this is where you need to stay with me. Because what comes next isn't just a verbal attack. It's the slow-motion demolition of the most influential character of the 21st century. And you'll witness every second. Give a like if you want more people to hear this. And if you think it's time to unmask the cardboard idol, Share this video. The truth needs resonance. Let's go back to the key moment. Moore said Trump's real weakness is his thin skin, that he can't handle rejection, can't accept defeat. And to prove it, he told an absurd but telling story. He compared the election to a football match. Tottenham won, Chelsea won. Who won? Obviously Tottenham. But if Trump were the commentator, he'd tell you Chelsea won. Because something's off. Because there are hidden votes. Because a reliable source says so. That's the level of delusion Moore exposed, and he said it plainly. Now I ask you, how long will we let lies have a louder microphone than the truth? How long can a brand replace a real person? Because Trump was exactly that. A brand. A caricature of success. A reality show host posing as a president. And the saddest part is that many believed it too. But what Moore did was more than criticism. It was an intervention, a wake-up call. And if you've made it this far, it's because you feel it too. That something's wrong. That this whole circus is about to collapse. Want to know how this story ends? I'll tell you. But first, tell me in the comments, when did you start doubting Trump? Or do you still believe he's a victim of the system? What comes next will change your perception forever. Don't leave. The scariest thing is that no one is paying attention. While the world's newspaper headlines focus on his most visible scandals, his provocative statements, or his political enemies, something far more sinister is happening beneath the surface. Something orchestrated from the shadows by a man who turned politics into a show. Pay attention. Because if you don't now, you might regret it for the rest of your life. While everyone watched Trump throw threats at North Korea, or deny obvious truths on camera, something else was happening. Something quiet, but devastating. Every day, behind the scenes, his government was gradually dismantling the structures that protect our air, our water, our lands, and our rights. Entire agencies with decades of work and regulation were gutted or manipulated by people with no interest in the public good. Can you imagine a country where natural reserves are sold to the highest bidder and no one can stop it? Well, you don't need to imagine. It's already happened. While the world's eyes were distracted, the Department of the Interior was selling federal lands to private companies. Lands that should belong to everyone became the exclusive property of interests seeking only profit. Why didn't anyone stop it? Because everyone was distracted by the noise of the show. But the most shocking thing isn't what was lost. It's that we didn't even notice. As if we were under a collective hypnosis. We kept following the spell. And meanwhile, the script Donald Trump wrote decades ago kept unfolding. A man who was never who he claimed to be, who never built an empire, only an illusion. Michael Moore, in a moment that will go down in history, dared to say it out loud. He didn't argue policy, he didn't talk ideology. He just stood in front of the camera and let the truth speak for itself. But how did someone like him, without a political machine, without legal backing, achieve what millions dreamed of? How did he manage to shake a figure who seemed invincible? Not with rage, but with laughter. And that's the key. Trump wasn't destroyed by the law. He was destroyed by ridicule, because when a leader becomes a joke, the fear evaporates, and with it, their power. Did you notice the shift? The exact moment when the laughter stopped being nervous and became liberating. Moore broke the fourth wall of Trumpism, tore off the character's makeup. He was no longer a magnate, not a patriot, not a savior of the people. He was just a desperate man shouting on the internet while the world laughed. And you know what's most ironic? Trump always knew this day might come, the day when the show wouldn't be enough, when the stage lights would go out and the audience would start leaving. But he never thought it would happen like this. Not because of a verdict, not because of an impeachment, but because of something uncontrollable. Laughter. Because real laughter can't be stopped. And that's exactly what Moore achieved. He didn't just expose the lie, he ridiculed it. And for a narcissist, that's a worse sentence than prison. Because you can appeal a verdict, you can fight accusations, but you can't make someone take you seriously again. And that's where everything changed. Posts full of fury, desperate attempts to divert attention, accusations against the system, the media, invisible enemies. None of it worked, because the country was no longer listening. It was just laughing. And you, watching this right now, what do you feel seeing this fall? Relief? Fear at the thought of how someone like this got so far? Or do you wonder if Moore just said what everyone was already thinking but no one dared to say? These are the questions that linger, the ones that make you uncomfortable, the ones that don't let you see Trump the same way anymore. Because what Moore did wasn't political criticism. It was a cultural intervention. He changed the tone of the conversation, and when that happens, there's no going back. In fact, the creepiest thing wasn't Trump's public fall, but the silence that followed. That awkward emptiness. It's the pause when a show ends, the lights come on, and you realize it was all part of a performance, a show, an illusion. And you, who applauded, who feared, who defended or attacked, are now left alone with one question. Did I really believe in this? That's the true power of laughter, because it doesn't just destroy the idol. It also forces the viewer to rethink everything. What if what you admired was just a false reflection? What if everything you believed about leadership, strength, success was part of a poorly written character? Laughter doesn't just destroy, it also awakens. And that's why Trump is weaker now than ever. Not because of politics, not because of the media, but because he lost his most important shield, the perception of power. Moore showed us that this power was paper-thin, that behind the tough speeches and red ties was a man who needed to be taken seriously, because without that, he vanished. And that's exactly what happened. The man who spoke of strength trembled at a single joke. The patriot who claimed to love the people ended up selling gold sneakers to those who could barely pay rent. The brilliant businessman turned out to be an expert at bankrupting casinos, not creating wealth. And the most devastating part is that Moore didn't even have to raise his voice. He just held up a mirror and let us see. What hurts, what remains. Because you can forget an accusation, you can ignore a headline, but you'll never forget how it felt to see a powerful man publicly humiliated. That moment when the audience shifts from shock to laughter, and then to pity. And Trump, who so feared looking weak, ended up looking smaller than ever. And here's the main point. This isn't just a story about Trump. It's a warning for everyone who builds their power on fear, manipulation, and image, because sooner or later, someone will laugh. And when they do, it will be the beginning of the end. So tell me, are you laughing too? If this video made you think, laugh, or even feel uneasy, leave it in the comments.